a war that has been going on for more than 75 years. Injustice, destruction, and siege. Orphaned children, widowed women, and entire families, old and young, displaced and killed. Today, our topic is one of the most important discussed on this channel: Palestine. How did the Zionist entity establish itself? Why was Palestine specifically chosen? To understand the full story, we must go back to before the Nakba, specifically to the year 1799, the time of Napoleon. Napoleon, a French military commander of Italian origin, ruled France in the late 18th century. He was one of the first people in that period to call on the Jews and propose the establishment of a special country for them, especially in Palestine. However, all his attempts failed. 40 years later, in 1840, these ideas were revived. The British foreign minister decided to send a letter to the British ambassador to Turkey. In this letter, he instructed him to convince the Ottoman Sultan to allow the immigration of Jews to Palestine. At that time, Jordan, Palestine, and Syria were all under Ottoman rule. But the Ottoman Sultan strongly rejected the immigration of Jews to Palestine because he understood the underlying intentions. The Arabs and Palestinians were aware from day one of the concept of Zionism, which is a movement seeking to colonize land and employ the religious dimension to establish a homeland for the world's remaining Jews in terms of identity, entity, and political future. At that time, 90% of the population of Palestine were Palestinian Muslims, and there were a small number of Jews. They lived there without problems or harm among them. The majority of Jews at the time lived in Europe. After the call of the British foreign minister, the first people to respond were the Rothschild brothers. They were 6 individuals who almost controlled the world. The Rothschild brothers' wealth is immense, and they are influential in the international economy. Their influence extends to most countries. Importantly, one of the Rothschild brothers decided to travel to Palestine. He visited Palestine approximately 4 times, and each time he tried to buy lands and build colonies. He established approximately 30 Jewish colonies in Palestine. During that period, a very important event happened in Russia. On March 11, 1881, the Russian Tsar was assassinated, and all charges were directed towards the Jews. Consequently, a plan emerged in Russia known as the Purge of Moscow. This plan did not merely focus on displacing the Jews from Moscow, but also relied on killing and torturing them in the worst possible ways. At the same time, a book called The Land of Gilead by a British member of parliament named Lawrence Oliphant was published. The Land of Gilead is a region located in Jordan, approximately bordered in the north by Jerash, Irbid, Ajlan, and a part of Salt. This book sent a message that the Jews must leave Europe because all of the destruction they were causing and head towards Gilead and Jordan. The Jews began to establish settlements in the Gilead region and tried to take possession of and settle there. However, the Jordanian tribes noticed that something strange was going on. The Jordanian tribes decided to hold an urgent meeting, and as a result, they learned that the Jews must leave Gilead. They submitted an official request to the Ottoman Empire to prevent Jewish immigration to Jordan. In 1885, the beginning of the founding of the Zionist movement emerged. One of the worst personalities known to humanity, Theodore Herzl, an Australian journalist and author of the Book of the Jewish State, appeared. This book proposed that the Jews should gather in one state. Soon after, the first Zionist conference was held in Switzerland, including some of the most prominent Jewish figures in Europe. They sought a country where they could settle as Jews and the founders of the Israeli state. After some deliberation, they decided on 3 potential locations: Uganda, Argentina, and Palestine. Unfortunately, they chose Palestine for several reasons. First, for them, Palestine was the land of promise. Herzl also stated in his book that Palestine was a land without a people, despite the fact that Palestine had been inhabited for centuries and was a fertile land with agriculture and life. Additionally, because the Arab countries posed a threat to them, they decided to establish a friendly state among the Arabs to dismantle the region. From here, the major countries began to support the Zionist movement and Herzl in establishing the Israeli state. Herzl believed the first step towards establishing the Israeli state was to allow Jewish immigration from Europe to Palestine. Sultan Abdul Hamid II was approached and offered £20 million to permit Jewish immigration to Palestine. However, he rejected the offer. Despite this, the Ottoman Empire was at its weakest during that period, and its financial situation was deteriorating. It was forced to start offering some Arab lands for sale. With the help of the Rothschild brothers, the Zionists managed to enter Palestine and began buying lands. Unfortunately, the lands they were buying were being taken from Palestinian lands, with the Jews replacing them. During this period, World War I began, and despite its impending collapse, the Ottoman Empire participated in it. While the world was immersed in the First World War, Herbert Samuel submitted a completely secret memorandum to the British. He stated that it was not yet time for a Jewish state to be established and that Britain should seize Palestine and start allowing Jews to immigrate and settle there. He suggested that there needed to be 4 million Jews among the Palestinians. This led to the issuance of the Balfour Declaration, in which Britain confirmed its intent to establish a Jewish state in Palestine. By 1930, nearly 500,000 Jews had immigrated to Palestine. During this time, Jewish gangs began forming and trying to disrupt the Palestinian way of life. They started killing Palestinians, stealing their homes, and burning them, while Britain did nothing to stop this. The Palestinians decided to protest in one of the largest demonstrations, known as the Jerusalem Protest, against Britain, demanding an end to Jewish immigration to Palestine. Britain showed little intention of stopping Jewish immigration as the situation worsened, fearing for its influence in the region. Simultaneously, Hitler emerged as a Nazi leader in Germany with a strong hatred for Jews, blaming them for Germany's loss in World War I. Severe massacres against Jews began in Germany, leading to the onset of World War II and the extermination of Jews in an unprecedented manner. Jews began fleeing Europe and Germany, immigrating to Palestine. At the end of World War II, after Palestine had received numerous Jewish immigrants, both Britain and France were in a weakened state despite defeating Germany. Consequently, Britain decided to withdraw from Jordan, granting it independence, and France withdrew from Syria and Lebanon, also granting them independence. However, when Britain decided to withdraw from Palestine, disaster struck. There was a dispute between the Palestinian landowners and the Jewish immigrants. Britain proposed a solution, giving 55% of the land to the Jews, 44% to the Palestinians, and sharing the remaining 1%, Jerusalem, between them. The biggest problem arose when Britain provided all its weapons to the Jews before withdrawing. The Jews, feeling empowered and well-armed, began occupying Palestinian lands piece by piece. The Palestinians, lacking comparable weapons and resources, could not effectively resist. Thus, the Nakba, or catastrophe, began in 1948, marking the start of the widespread displacement and suffering of the Palestinian people.